You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. Dinner had always been the one time we could pretend things weren't falling apart, but tonight, even that felt like a performance. The clink of forks and knives filled the silence. Karen's eyes stayed on me, her gaze sharp but controlled, like she was holding something back. "Mark," she said, her voice calm, too calm. "You need to apologize for the way you've been acting. Or you need to leave." I didn't look at Sarah or Luke. I knew they were both pretending not to notice, the way they always did when things got tense. Sarah pushed her peas around her plate like she was trying to find some peace in the chaos. Luke barely glanced up from his phone, but I could feel the space between us getting wider. It was suffocating. "I've apologized," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not doing this again." "Then leave," Karen said, her tone still steady, but the words had weight now. "I'm not going to keep doing this." "I can't." I stared at my plate, letting the silence stretch between us. I could feel the walls closing in. The house, the kids, Karen, everything I'd spent my life building and fixing felt like a prison now. A place where nothing I did seemed to matter anymore. It wasn't the first time she'd said something like this, but it was the first time she'd said it with such finality. "Fine," I said, standing up. No drama, no argument, just resignation. I placed my fork down on the plate and walked toward the door, my heart heavy in my chest. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Behind me, I heard Sarah's quiet voice. "Mom, should we be worried?" Karen didn't answer. I left without another word, my footsteps echoing in the empty space of the house. I felt like an invisible man. The door clicked shut behind me, and I was out in the night, alone. I didn't look back as I walked through the house. The front door clicked shut behind me, and I was suddenly surrounded by the quiet, the kind of silence that wraps around you like a weight. I moved through the living room, my fingers brushing against the tools I'd left on the counter. A hammer, a wrench, the screwdriver I used just last week to fix the sink. Every little object felt like a reminder of what I used to do here, what I used to be. I paused by the shelf I'd built, the one I put up for Sarah when she wanted somewhere to put her books. I remembered how proud I'd felt, how she'd smiled and said it was the best shelf ever. That smile didn't feel real now. It was just another thing that had faded into the background. Then there was the chair, the one I'd repaired after it broke last year. It used to be one of Karen's favorite pieces. Now, it just sat there, forgotten. I let my hand linger on the arm of the chair for a second before I walked past it, through the hallway and into the garage. The truck was there, just where I'd left it. It had been with me for years. The same truck I used to haul bikes when the kids were little. The same one I'd used to help neighbors move or carry lumber for projects around the house. I opened the door, slid into the seat, and slammed it shut. The engine roared to life when I turned the key, but the sound of it felt hollow, as if the truck was just as tired as I was. I backed out of the driveway, pulling into the street without looking back. No destination in mind. I wasn't running away. I wasn't trying to escape. I was just leaving. The road stretched on, the headlights slicing through the darkness. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Not with Karen's ultimatum hanging over my head. Not with the silence between us, thick and suffocating. Eventually, I found myself by the old fishing lake. It used to be a spot where I'd take the kids, just the four of us, sitting on that bench while we fished or talked about nothing important. I thought about the last time we came out here. It had been a few years, but I still remembered the way Sarah had laughed when Luke caught a fish too big for him to handle. That was before everything started to fall apart. The bench was still there, but the area around it looked run down now. The grass was overgrown, and the water had lost its shine. Everything about the place felt like a reflection of my life right now. Forgotten, worn down, and empty. I parked the truck and sat there for a while, just staring out at the lake. The engine was still running, the low hum vibrating through the truck, but I couldn't bring myself to turn it off. It was like I needed the noise to remind me that I was still here, that I hadn't disappeared completely. I thought about Karen again, about the kids. I didn't feel angry, just numb. Like I'd given everything I had to a place that no longer wanted me. I watched the water ripple in the dim light, the world outside my truck a blur. I was too tired to move, too tired to think. So, I let the silence swallow me whole. Eventually, the darkness settled in, and I closed my eyes. I didn't bother turning the truck off. I fell asleep just like that, with the engine running, the hum a low lullaby in the background. I woke up to the sun slanting through the truck's windshield. The engine was still running, just like I left it, but I wasn't sure how long I'd been asleep. I rubbed my eyes, felt the weight of everything pressing in on me. I didn't feel any different, just tired. Tired of everything, but especially tired of thinking. It wasn't anger that drove me out here, and it wasn't shame. It was just the reality of knowing there was nothing left for me at home. I pulled the keys from the ignition, cut the engine, and sat there for a minute, letting the stillness settle over me like a blanket. I didn't know if I wanted to go back. I wasn't sure I could. The house, though, that place, that was a different story. I thought about the kids, the way Sarah's face had been when Karen gave me that ultimatum. Sarah had been distant, her eyes glassy. Luke, as usual, was wrapped up in his own world. It was like they were both already used to the idea that nothing ever really changed between us. I got out of the truck and stretched, the air fresh but biting. The sun was climbing higher in the sky, and for a moment, I thought about heading back to the house. But the thought felt like something I couldn't touch, something that didn't belong to me anymore. I decided to drive around for a bit just to clear my head. But it wasn't long before I found myself thinking about the house, about Karen, about the kids. By the time I got home that evening, it was late, and the house was quiet, too quiet. I pushed the door open carefully, like I was trying to sneak in, but I knew I wouldn't be able to escape it. Karen hadn't even noticed I was gone. Not really. She was sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in front of her, flipping through some bills. I stood there for a minute, watching her. She didn't look up. "Mark," she asked, her voice flat. "You back from your walk?" "Yeah," I muttered. "I'm back." She didn't say anything else, just nodded and took another sip of her wine. I felt the weight of the silence, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't go to bed that night, not right away. Instead, I sat down on the couch, feeling the quiet press against me. It felt like a different kind of stillness. Not peaceful, but suffocating, like the house had taken on a life of its own and was holding me in place. The next morning, I woke up to find that my side of the bed was still untouched. Karen was already up, probably already at work or somewhere. The bed felt too big without me in it, and I hated that feeling. It was like I had no place left there. I was a ghost, just passing through. I heard the phone ring a few hours later. I wasn't surprised when Karen picked it up. "Yeah," she said, and then, after a pause, "It's my brother." I didn't stick around to listen to the conversation, but I knew what it would be. David was probably checking in, wondering where I'd gone. Karen didn't tell him anything, though, at least not directly. She kept it vague. "Everything's fine," she said, her voice just a little too tight. "He's just taking some time. He'll be back." It wasn't the truth, but it was close enough for her. And deep down, I could tell it was starting to eat at her. The week dragged on. Each day felt the same, like I was watching life pass by through a window, unable to reach it. I thought about the kids again, Sarah mostly. She hadn't said much about me leaving, but I could tell she was avoiding it. She didn't want to deal with it. Luke didn't seem to care one way or the other, which bothered me more than anything. By the end of the week, things in the house had started to fall apart. Not in any dramatic way, but slowly, in little ways. There was a stack of dishes in the sink, and the laundry hadn't been folded. Bills were piling up on the counter, and I couldn't tell if it was because Karen didn't have the energy or because she didn't care. The silence was growing, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to stay and be a part of it, or if it was time to just keep walking away. But in that house, it felt like no one noticed the absence. Not really, not yet. Karen spent the next few days trying to track me down. At first, it was casual, just a few calls to my friends and family, asking if I'd been in touch with them. They hadn't heard from me. My brother David had been the first to call, but I didn't answer. I had no intention of picking up, not yet. It wasn't long before Karen called my boss at the auto shop. She tried to act normal about it, but I could tell it was eating at her. I could almost hear the strain in her voice as she asked if I had called in sick or taken time off. "Mark's been gone for a few days," she said. "Have you heard from him?" My boss's answer wasn't the one Karen wanted. "Nah, Karen, he hasn't called in. He's always good about that, you know? Maybe he's just taking a break or something." A break. Yeah, that was a laughable way to put it. I wasn't taking a break. I was leaving. But Karen wasn't ready to admit that yet. When she got off the phone with my boss, I could see the tension on her face. It was starting to sink in, the idea that I wasn't just out for a walk or hiding in a bar somewhere. I was gone, and I wasn't coming back. Not yet, anyway. Sarah was the one who brought it up next. She'd been quiet the past few days, sitting off to the side, half focused on her phone. But now she looked at her mom with that familiar, frustrated expression. You know, if you had just listened to him, listened to Dad, none of this would have happened, Sarah said, barely looking up from her phone. Maybe he wouldn't have left if you just apologized. Karen flinched like she'd been slapped, but she didn't show it. Instead, she folded her arms across her chest, trying to hold the pieces of control together. "Don't start with that," she said, her voice sharp. "It's his fault for not apologizing first. He's the one who didn't care about us enough to fix things. You think I haven't tried?" Her voice broke a little at the end, and I saw the cracks, the first real cracks in her. Sarah didn't back down. "Maybe he didn't care because you never really listened." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment it felt like the house had taken a deep breath. It was the first time Sarah had said something like that to her. I knew it cut deep. Karen let out a long sigh. She didn't answer, but I could see it. She was starting to doubt, starting to feel the weight of the things she'd ignored, things she couldn't fix anymore. And deep down, she knew she couldn't stop me. Not now. I didn't hear much more of their conversation. I was already gone, already tuned out, back in my truck, heading nowhere in particular. The thing was, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't mad at Karen, not really. I didn't care about the endless arguments or the promises she never kept. What I cared about now was the silence. It was an odd thing. I had never realized how much I'd wanted it until I was finally surrounded by it. At first, the quiet felt like something heavy, like I was running from something, like I was losing myself. But after a few days of just being out here, it started to feel different. It was almost empowering. I didn't have to keep pretending anymore. No more forced smiles at dinner, no more apologizing for things I didn't even know I'd done wrong. I wasn't lost, I was just alone. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know if I'd ever go back, if I ever wanted to. I wasn't even sure if I should. The quiet was mine now, and it felt better than anything I'd experienced in that house for years. So, I kept driving. The days blurred into each other, and Karen's face grew more and more drawn as the weight of everything piled up. The house, once a place where we kept everything together, now felt like a sinking ship. Bills stacked up on the kitchen counter, untouched, dishes piled high in the sink. The yard, once meticulously kept, now looked like a jungle. I didn't know about any of it. I didn't have to. I wasn't there to see it, and even if I had been, I don't think I could have cared. The noise, the chaos, it was all their problem now, not mine. Luke, who had once been glued to his gaming console for hours, found himself taking on more responsibilities. He didn't like it. I could almost hear him fuming every time Karen asked him to help with something. First it was mowing the lawn, then, when the lawnmower broke down, it was hauling the trash to the curb. I bet he hated every second of it, but there was no one else to do it. "Mom, I'm not fixing this crap," he muttered one morning, standing next to the broken lawnmower in the garage. "Why don't you just get Dad to do it?" Karen didn't answer right away. She just stood there, looking at the mower like it was a foreign object. "Your dad isn't here, Luke," she said after a long pause. "You're gonna have to figure it out." He threw his hands up and walked away, not even trying. He slammed the door behind him, and that was the last she heard from him for a while. It was like that every day. Sarah, on the other hand, had grown more frustrated with Karen too. I could feel it through the phone, the short text messages when she was too angry to talk to her mom. "You need to do something, Mom," Sarah snapped once, her voice tight with irritation. "You can't just keep pretending everything's fine." "I'm doing what I can, Sarah," Karen shot back, a hint of desperation creeping in her voice. "I'm trying." But trying wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. The plumbing backed up, and the kitchen sink started to leak. The AC unit went out one hot afternoon when the temperature hit 95 degrees. Karen was sweating, her face flushed with frustration, trying to figure out how to fix it all. She wasn't good at this stuff. She never had been. Mark had always taken care of the house repairs, but now there was no one to turn to. "God damn it," Karen muttered under her breath when she tried to turn the AC back on. Nothing happened. "I can't do this." She picked up the phone, made a call. I didn't hear her side of the conversation, but when she hung up, she looked defeated. "HVAC guy's coming tomorrow." "But he's charging a fortune," she said to Sarah, her voice edged with frustration. "It's gonna cost more than we have." "That's great," Sarah said sarcastically, rolling her eyes. Just what we need right now. I wasn't there to see the full extent of it, but I knew. I could picture it in my head, the stress on Karen's face, her every movement tense. The house felt smaller somehow, like it was shrinking around her. The plumber came next, and the quote he gave for the repairs was even worse. He couldn't even fix the sink right away because the pipes were older than the house and needed to be replaced completely. "Are you kidding me?" Karen had said, her voice high with panic. "How much more can we afford to spend?" I wasn't there. I wasn't there to tell her everything would be okay, or to fix the mess she couldn't handle. I wasn't there to explain to Luke how to use a wrench, or to remind Sarah that everything would get done. I just kept driving, kept helping people who actually appreciated what I did. The town didn't care that I was gone from home. They liked me better this way, quiet. A guy who showed up when asked, did his work without complaint, and left. No drama, just a few hours of help for a neighbor in need. A broken fence here, a door that wouldn't shut there. No one was demanding anything from me, except my hands and my time. I didn't have to fix anything at home. I didn't have to fix anything for Karen, or Luke, or Sarah. The weight of it all felt like it was slipping off my shoulders. I wasn't their savior anymore, and maybe, just maybe, I didn't need to be. It was peaceful out here, quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't wondering if it would all fall apart. It already had. But as I worked for the townspeople, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe this was the life I should have had all along. Maybe I was finally free. There was something satisfying about the way life had settled into this quiet rhythm. No rush, no demands, just small tasks for people who actually seemed to appreciate what I did. No one asked for more than I could give. No complaints, no ultimatums. I found myself helping around town more than I expected. It was strange at first, fixing things for people I barely knew. A broken fence here, a door that wouldn't latch there. It wasn't much, but it felt like something real, something that mattered. I didn't need to be thanked. Hell, most people didn't even offer money, but a cup of coffee or a homemade pie here and there felt like a reward in itself, a nod of acknowledgement. That was all it took. Somewhere along the way, it became my new normal. I got used to the idea that I didn't have to try so damn hard anymore. I didn't have to be anyone's hero. I didn't have to do anything more than was asked of me. It was a strange thing to go from being the guy who was always fixing things at home, whether it was a broken pipe, a car that wouldn't start, or a problem no one else seemed to see, to suddenly not being needed at all. That sense of sacrifice, the endless giving, it had been draining. At first, I didn't realize how much it had worn me down, how much I'd been losing just to keep everything together. But now, here, in this quiet place, I didn't feel like I was being drained. I felt full in a way I hadn't in years. The small acts of kindness I was doing for others felt more rewarding than anything I'd ever done at home. The gratitude was real. They didn't expect anything more from me, just what I had to give in the moment. That felt more like love than anything I'd received at home in a long time. One day, I found myself at Mrs. Waller's house. She was an elderly woman who lived 2 streets over, a widow who barely left her front porch these days. Her walker had been squeaking for weeks, and she'd asked me to take a look at it. The screws were loose, the wheels had a tendency to drag. It wasn't much, but she couldn't do it herself. When I finished fixing it, tightening the bolts, making sure everything ran smoothly, she stood up slowly, testing the walker. It didn't make that god-awful squeak anymore. She smiled at me, a small but real smile, and said, "Thank you, Mark. You don't know how much this means to me." It was the way she said it, like I had done something truly meaningful. I didn't expect it, didn't need it, but it hit me harder than I thought it would. It felt better than fixing the sink for Karen, or putting up another shelf for Sarah. Better than anything I'd ever done for my own family. She appreciated me. No expectations, no strings attached, just a simple thank you. I stood there for a second, letting it sink in. It was a feeling I hadn't had in years. I didn't feel used or overlooked. I felt like I mattered, even if only for that small, quiet moment. As I walked back to my truck, I thought about Karen again, about the mess she was trying to manage at home. I could imagine her frustration, trying to take on all the things I used to do, mowing the lawn, fixing the plumbing, the broken things in the house. The weight of it all must have been crushing her, especially since it wasn't something she was good at. But I didn't feel sorry for her, not anymore. I didn't feel pity, not even a little. Instead, I felt a sense of liberation. Watching her try to juggle all the things I'd been doing for years, doing it poorly, struggling to keep it together, felt like a reminder that I had been giving everything without ever really being appreciated. I'd always been the one to pick up the pieces, always the one to sacrifice, always the one trying to hold things together, while no one even noticed when I was falling apart. But here, in this new life, I didn't have to fix everything. I didn't have to be perfect, and I sure as hell didn't have to put up with the constant tension and the quiet resentment. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I had now, and it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't drowning. I wasn't just surviving. I was living. The weight of silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like freedom. Karen's control began to slip slowly, like a thread unraveling. She had always been the one to keep everything in place, everything in its right spot, everyone in line. But with each passing day, I could feel her grip weakening. The bills stacked up on the counter, unpaid and ignored, their due dates fast approaching. The family business, the one we'd built together, was starting to lose customers. The regulars who had always relied on Mark's steady presence now noticing the absence of his work. People in town began asking about me. It wasn't a lot at first, just casual mentions here and there, but the questions kept coming. "How's Mark doing?" people would ask. "When's he coming back?" Karen had no choice but to lie. It wasn't like she could tell them the truth, that I was gone and probably wouldn't be coming back. She'd always been good at putting on that mask of everything being fine, but it was starting to crack. "He's just taken a break," Karen would say, her voice tight, a forced smile plastered on her face. "He'll be back soon." She said it to people in town, to friends, even to herself. But I knew, deep down, she was starting to realize just how much had fallen apart without me there to keep it all together. Sarah was the first one to notice it. Her frustration with her mom had been building for weeks. I could tell, even from a distance, that Sarah was beginning to question Karen's authority, starting to see the cracks in the foundation she had always believed in. Sarah had always been more perceptive than Karen gave her credit for, and now it was starting to hit her. Karen had never truly understood the weight that Mark carried for the family, the responsibility, the pressure, the sacrifices that had kept the wheels turning, even when they weren't appreciated. One evening, Luke's friend Ryan came over. He was a good kid, always around the house, hanging out with Luke, but his offhand comment that evening hit Karen harder than I think she expected. "Man, things were way better when Mark was around," Ryan said, laughing as he kicked back on the couch, Luke beside him. "Your dad always kept everything running smoothly, right?" It wasn't meant to be cruel, but it cut Karen straight to the bone. She froze, her eyes locking on Ryan for a second, and I could tell something inside her shifted. The reality of it hit her like a freight train. She stood up abruptly, pacing the room for a minute, trying to gather herself. The moment stretched on, heavy and thick, with the things neither of us were saying. "I'm trying," she said finally, her voice faltering. "You think this is easy?" The question wasn't aimed at Ryan, not really. It was aimed at herself, a cry of frustration that only the four walls of the house could hear. Sarah, who had been quiet for the last few days, turned to Karen with a sharpness that startled even me. "Trying isn't enough," she said, her voice cold but clear. "You don't get it, Mom. You never did. Dad did all the heavy lifting, all the things you didn't want to deal with. And now you can't even keep the house from falling apart." The words stung. They should have stung because they were the truth. Karen didn't respond, her eyes welling with something she didn't want to admit. I could see it in her face. She knew Sarah was right, and it was too much to bear. She had never really seen the weight Mark carried. She never noticed how it had always been him, shouldering everything, holding it together while she focused on other things. Now, the burden was on her, and she was buckling under it. It was only then, after all the months of silence, that Karen understood. And it hit her all at once. The realization that she hadn't appreciated me, not the way she should have, not the way I needed. And now that I was gone, the house, the business, the kids, everything was slipping through her fingers. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even frustrated anymore. She just looked defeated. I wasn't there to see the fallout in real time, but I could feel it. The things I'd done without anyone noticing were now the things they couldn't figure out how to fix. The cracks were there. The absence was felt. And Karen, as much as she tried to mask it, couldn't hide from the fact that Mark had been the one holding it all together. And now, without him, everything was unraveling. I wasn't coming back to fix it, not yet at least. I was still out here, taking the small jobs, quietly doing what I could for the people who didn't take me for granted. The people who saw me and didn't expect me to be perfect. But Karen was beginning to realize what it meant to lose me, what it really meant. And the weight of that realization, that shift in her world, was something she'd have to carry alone. It came on a Wednesday afternoon, slipped between the bills and a flyer for a local event. The envelope was plain, but I knew who it was from before I even picked it up. I sat down on the porch with it in my hands, the weight of it heavier than I expected. Karen's handwriting, familiar but somehow distant now, looked almost like a plea before I even opened it. My fingers hesitated on the edge of the paper. I wasn't sure what I expected to read. I unfolded it, the words spilling out like they had been waiting a long time to leave her. Mark, I've been trying to figure out how to say this for days, but I don't know how. I know I've made mistakes. I've been wrong, and I know I've hurt you. I never saw how much you were carrying. I've been selfish, but I can't do this alone, and I can't fix what's been broken if you're not here. I know I didn't appreciate you the way I should have, but I'm asking you to come back. Please. I can't hold everything together without you. Karen. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was a surrender, a quiet giving up of control. She didn't say sorry outright, but I knew what it meant. She was finally seeing it, seeing me and the role I played in the family, the things I had been doing all along that no one had ever really appreciated. I let the letter fall to my lap, staring at it for a long moment. There was a part of me that should have felt something. Relief, anger, regret. But I didn't feel any of those things. Instead, I felt vindicated, like I had made the right choice in leaving, even though I wasn't sure what the future held. It wasn't about going back anymore. It was about finally stepping away from a life that had never truly valued me. I stood up, walked inside, and took the letter to the trash can. But instead of tossing it in, I paused. I stared at it for a moment longer. A quiet finality lingered in the air. I turned around and grabbed the matches from the counter. I set the letter on fire. The edges curled, the paper blackening in seconds, then crumbling to ash. I watched it burn down to nothing, the flames flickering out as if erasing any possibility of going back. It felt better than I imagined. Like I was finally letting go of the last piece of the life I'd built. The life that hadn't really been mine for a long time. I grabbed my jacket and headed out of the house without a plan, without even thinking. My feet led me toward the lake, the same place I'd gone before, the only place where I felt a strange sense of peace in the quiet. I parked the truck by the water, just like I had that first night. The engine cut off, and for a second, it was just me and the world outside. The lake had that same dull, faded look it always had. But I didn't mind. It felt familiar, like something that wouldn't change no matter what I did. I sat on the tailgate, staring out at the dark water, the stars starting to prick the sky. I let the silence settle around me, the only sound the occasional rustle of leaves and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. I didn't need anything else right now. Not a phone call, not Karen, not the life I left behind. I let out a breath, feeling lighter than I had in months. I wasn't trapped anymore. I wasn't trying to fix something that wasn't meant to be fixed. I was free. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to slip into that familiar role of doing everything for everyone else, always taking the blame, always being the one to hold things together while no one noticed when I was falling apart. The phone rang as I sat there, the screen lighting up with Karen's name. Her voice on the other end was strained, desperate. "Mark," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, just come back. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I'll do better. Please." The pleading in her tone hit me in a way I hadn't expected. It made me realize just how far gone we were, how much it had all broken down. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's too late by the time the words come out. Too late to undo what's been done. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I hung up and silenced the phone. I wasn't going back. Not to that. Not to her. Not to a life that didn't see me, didn't value me. And as I sat there by the lake, the cool air filling my lungs, I knew I was done. For good. I came back to the house on a Tuesday, just like any other day, but it felt different. The air was heavy, thick with the silence of a place that had been left behind. No shouting, no clinking dishes, no sounds of Sarah and Luke fighting or running around. The house felt like a shell, like it was waiting for something, or maybe for someone, to fill it again. I walked in through the front door, the same way I always had, and there she was, Karen sitting at the kitchen table, staring down at something in her hands. She didn't hear me at first, and when I stood in the doorway, she slowly looked up. Her face was a mixture of surprise, fear, and something else I couldn't quite place. She didn't speak. Neither of us did. I walked past her without a word, like a stranger moving through the place I once called home. She didn't stop me, didn't ask where I'd been or why I was here. It was like we both already knew the answer. I didn't look at her again as I headed for the garage. I hadn't planned on coming back, not like this, but something inside me clicked, and I couldn't just leave the things I'd worked on, things that had kept the house, the family, together all these years. The garage door creaked as I opened it. The same tools, the same clutter, the same broken stuff I'd been fixing for years. It felt oddly comforting, like a part of me was still here, even though I was already gone. I started taking my tools, the ones I'd fixed things with, the ones I'd used to keep the place running, my tool chest, the spare parts I'd accumulated over the years, everything that was mine and only mine. It was strange, but in a way, it felt like taking back pieces of myself I'd lost along the way. Karen was still sitting at the kitchen table when I came back into the house, carrying more of my things. She didn't say anything. She didn't move, just watched me like she wasn't sure what to do. Maybe she thought I'd come back to fix things, but I wasn't here for that. Not anymore. I kept walking past her, gathering what little was left of my presence in that house. The picture frames I'd built, the shelves, the chairs, all of it, gone. It wasn't just the physical things I was taking. It was everything I'd ever put into that life. I didn't look at her again, didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. It wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't about us. It was just about me and what I was finally letting go of. I grabbed the last of it, my toolbox, my bag, and headed for the door. I was done. Karen didn't try to stop me. She didn't ask me to stay. She just sat there, her hands trembling a little as she gripped the edge of the table, watching me leave. I walked out, past the house that I had built, past the life I had spent so long trying to hold together. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. The door clicked shut behind me, and Karen stayed there, in the house, knowing it was too late. I didn't look back. I couldn't.